Have you ever have you ever achieved a really major goal or maybe stepped into a brand new role or finally healed a broken relationship only to wake up the next day feeling completely unchanged?
Oh, yeah, that happens so often.
Right. Or worse, feeling like a total imposter in your own life.
Welcome to Vibrations and Manifestations. I'm Jared.
And I'm Alicia.
I am so glad you're joining us for Season 2, Deep Dive number 111.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm so excited to dive into this one.
Me too, because for today's deep dive, we are unpacking a really fascinating stack of concepts to answer a question that I think we have all felt at some point,
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt.
but we very rarely actually understand it. Our mission today is to figure out, why does our life sometimes upgrade before our identity does?
It is a profound question.
Yeah.
And it's one that touches almost every aspect of, you know, human growth.
Right.
We spend so much time focusing on how to change our external circumstances,
Right.
but we rarely talk about the psychological whiplash that happens once we actually succeed.
And that whiplash is such a common phenomenon.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how this plays out for you. You finally get that promotion you've been working years for, or maybe you heal an old painful relationship, or you step out and achieve a massive personal goal.
Yeah.
Externally, the bridge has been crossed. Everything around you is different. But internally, you wake up the next morning feeling like the same old version of yourself.
Yes. You look in the mirror and think, wait, shouldn't I feel completely different right now?
Exactly. And because you don't automatically feel like a new person, you might even mistake this lingering feeling for imposter syndrome. You start looking around your upgraded reality and thinking, uh-oh, I don't belong here. They're going to figure me out.
That feeling of disconnect is exactly what we are focusing on today. There's a specific phrase for this experience, and it is called identity lag.
Identity lag.
Yeah. It is the temporary and often really uncomfortable gap that occurs when your external reality updates faster than your internal self-image.
Having a distinct name for it makes the whole experience feel, I don't know, so much less isolating. It frames it as a process rather than a personal failing.
Which is exactly the mindset we want to bring to our time together today. Think of this deep dive almost like a workshop. Our primary goal is to normalize this uncomfortable gap for you.
Right, to take the pressure off.
Exactly. We want you to realize that when you feel this profound disconnect between your life and your self-image, it isn't a failure. It isn't a red flag that you are an imposter or that you somehow tricked your way into your own life. It is simply your nervous system needing a moment to recalibrate to a new baseline.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand identity lag, we need to look at how it plays out in the real world. I always think of the ultimate quantum leap.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
I'm talking about Neil Armstrong. July 20th, 1969.
Right. A day that literally shifted the trajectory of human history.
I know he walked on the moon, but how does the most famous astronaut in history tie into feeling like an imposter or experiencing identity lag?
It is actually a perfect illustration because of the sheer scale of the shift. Think about it.
Yeah.
He becomes the first human being to walk on the moon. Instant, unfathomable global fame. His face is on every television set on the planet.
Yeah, he couldn't go anywhere.
Nowhere. He is receiving invitations from world leaders, presidents, scientific institutions. With a single step off that ladder, his entire environment and status change overnight.
But then he comes back to Earth.
He comes back, and after the ticker tape parades and the initial global celebrations fade, what does he do? He doesn't spend the rest of his life chasing that celebrity or leaning into this new global icon persona. He actually chooses a surprisingly quiet path.
He became a professor, right?
Yes, an engineering professor at the University of Cincinnati.
From the moon to grading papers in Ohio. That is quite the pivot.
His students described him as this incredibly humble, thoughtful, calm guy who seemed almost uncomfortable with the immense fame that followed him around. What's fascinating here is that even the greatest, most public achievement in human history couldn't instantly update his internal sense of self.
Wow.
His reality changed overnight. He was universally recognized as the man who walked on the moon, but internally, he's still deeply identified as a quiet, dedicated test pilot and engineer from Ohio.
So his environment updated immediately, but his identity needed time.
And arguably, it never fully aligned with the global superstar status because that just wasn't his core self. It shows us that external breakthroughs can arrive in a single explosive moment, but identity integration takes real time.
It's incredible to think that even someone experiencing that level of undeniable objective success had to navigate this gap. But we see this play out in everyday life too. I was thinking about a deeply emotional story about a grandmother whose life changed in a very different way.
Yes, that situation really highlights the darker, more painful side of this lag.
Painful side of lag, when the sudden change is a profound loss.
Yeah, we need to talk about that.
I know you have a deeply personal narrative to share that illustrates this with such heartbreaking clarity. It provides a necessary contrast. It shows how identity anchors us and how devastating it can be when the anchor holds fast but the ship is destroyed.
Yeah, I want to share a story about my grandmother. It perfectly illustrates what happens when identity becomes a prison.
I'd love to hear it.
I want you to imagine a specific kind of house. The kind of home where, for most of my childhood, my grandmother was the absolute, undisputed center of gravity. She wasn't loud or demanding. She didn't rule with an iron fist.
She ruled with domestic rhythm.
Exactly. Everything in our family orbited around her kitchen. If you walked through her front door at any hour of the day, there was activity. A pot of soup simmering on the stove, fresh bread resting on the counter, dish towels folded with geometric precision over the oven handle.
She was the architect of that environment.
She was. She moved through that house with a loving, almost athletic efficiency that only comes from decades of executing the same routines. She knew the exact creak of the floorboards. The floors were relentlessly swept, the counters were spotless, the beds were made with tight corners.
She knew exactly where every single object in that house belonged.
And she took an immense, quiet pride in caring for people. If you visited, you were fed. It was not a request, it was a mandate. She watched her family closely, anticipating what they needed, a glass of water, an extra blanket, before they even realized they needed it.
Taking care of that house and the people inside it wasn't merely a set of tasks she performed. It was the core architecture of her identity.
Her entire self-concept was woven into being the caretaker, the provider of comfort, the relentless engine of the home.
And then things changed.
Then, on an otherwise normal Tuesday afternoon, the external reality shifted instantly and violently. She suffered a severe stroke.
Oh, so sorry.
One moment, she was standing at her kitchen sink, washing vegetables, and the next moment, she collapsed. She survived the medical emergency, but the physical damage was extensive and permanent. She could no longer walk.
This vibrant woman who had spent her entire adult life moving fluidly and purposefully through her domain was suddenly confined to a wheelchair.
The stroke also affected her speech centers. Her words, which used to be quick and sharp, now came out slowly, slurred, and unevenly.
This scenario moves beyond a tragic medical event. It enters the realm of profound identity lag. This was a catastrophic disruption of the self.
It really was. The most painful part was seeing her sitting in her wheelchair, parked in the corner of her own kitchen, forced to watch other people wash her dishes, forced to watch her daughters and neighbors clean the house she used to command.
That had to be agonizing for her.
When she did manage to articulate her feelings, the emotion wasn't peaceful acceptance, it was searing anger and a deep, suffocating despair. You could see the furious frustration in her eyes whenever someone tried to help her cut her food or adjust her blanket. She utterly despised being dependent.
The anger is entirely understandable when viewed through the lens of identity. Her mind, her memories, and her fundamental sense of self were entirely anchored in an environment and a physical capability that simply no longer existed in reality.
The gap between her internal identity, the capable, fiercely independent, efficient caretaker, and her new external reality-dependent, immobile, and struggling to speak, was an absolute chasm.
She was waking up every single morning trapped inside a life that aggressively contradicted the person she felt like on the inside.
The result of that agonizing gap was silence. Over the course of a few months, she simply stopped talking.
Just completely stop.
It wasn't that the stroke further degraded her physical ability to speak. It was a choice. She chose silence over the indignity of participating in a reality that didn't match her identity. She would sit by the window and just watch the house move around her, detached.
The stroke altered her life in a single second, but her identity had nowhere to go.
It lingered in the past, stubbornly holding on to a version of herself that no longer fit the world she was forced to inhabit.
It is a profoundly sorrowful illustration of the human condition.
The internal self keeps reaching for levers that are just no longer there.
I completely understand why a tragic event like a stroke or a sudden loss would cause a massive identity crisis. But we also see deeply positive events triggering this same crisis. You look at lottery winners who lose all their money, or newly famous artists who completely burn out and sabotage their careers.
Or retired athletes feeling invisible because their external role disappeared but their internal identity remained.
Right, but why would winning millions of dollars or achieving your dream cause your nervous system to panic? Shouldn't that just be pure joy?
That is the paradox of identity lag, and it comes down to how our brains and bodies are wired to perceive reality. Let's look at the science here.
So what does this all mean? Like, what is actually happening in our brains?
Well, let's bring in the work of Dan McAdams on narrative identity theory and Hazel Marcus on self-schema theory. They explain that the brain builds internal life stories and cognitive schemas. These are deep mental blueprints, and they take time to rewrite.
It reminds me of the autocorrect feature on a smartphone.
That is a brilliant analogy. How do you mean?
Well, think of those schemas like the autocorrect on your phone. For 30 years, your brain has been typing the phrase, "I am a junior employee who struggles to be heard."
Okay.
When you suddenly get promoted to director, you try to type, "I am a confident leader." But your brain's autocorrect keeps aggressively changing your behavior back to junior employee. It takes time and repetition to teach your brain's autocorrect the new vocabulary.
That is exactly what is happening on a neurological level. When a major life event happens, your brain doesn't instantly delete the old autocorrect dictionary and download a new one. We know from Norman Doidge's extensive work on neuroplasticity and Lisa Feldman Barrett's constructed emotion theory that rewiring these predictive pathways is a gradual physical process.
You are literally building new neural pathways.
Yes, it requires repeated experience and behavior to convince the brain that the new reality is permanent.
And while those new pathways are slowly being built, we are stuck in this disorienting gap.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at Stephen Cordis's polyvagal theory and the fear circuitry research by Joseph Ledoux. Your nervous system's primary job is keeping you safe.
Right.
But here is the critical catch. To your primitive brain, safe doesn't mean happy or successful or rich. Safe simply means familiar.
Wow. So even if the change is exactly what you wanted, your body might reject it simply because it's new.
Precisely. When you suddenly get a massive promotion or win the lottery or even enter a healthy relationship after years of toxic ones, your logical brain is thrilled. But your vagus nerve and your amygdala just sense that you are in completely uncharted territory, and they hit the panic button.
They see expansion as a threat.
Exactly. The nervous system tries to pull you back to what is predictable, even if that predictable state was miserable or scarce. That is why so many lottery winners lose their money. Their internal identity still operates from a place of scarcity, so their nervous system engineers a return to that familiar, safe state.
That makes so much sense. What I love about diving into all this is how it connects the hard neurological science to spiritual and philosophical frameworks. They were all essentially describing the exact same human experience from different angles.
Absolutely. The language changes, but the underlying pattern is universal.
Right. You look at William Bridges' transition theory. He says change happens in 3 distinct phases: the ending, the neutral zone, and the new beginning. That neutral zone is our identity lag. It's the messy middle where the old is gone, but the new hasn't fully taken root.
And you see this mirrored in depth psychology, too. Carl Jung called it the process of individuation.
Yes. Or you look at spiritual teachers. Neville Goddard has this concept of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. He argued that the internal identity has to be coaxed and practiced until it matches the desired external state. Even Abraham Hicks talks about how expansion happens continuously, but our personal alignment has to catch up.
They all point to this natural rhythm. Growth comes in waves. It is expansion, followed by assimilation.
Expansion, then assimilation.
I like to think of it like breathing. You inhale, your lungs expand, and then you must exhale and allow your body to assimilate that oxygen. Feeling disoriented after a period of growth isn't a mistake. It is the required assimilation phase of your transformation.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because now that we understand the mechanics of this, we know it's a natural biological process and assimilation phase. How do we actually help ourselves get through it? For you listening right now, how do you actively get your identity to catch up to your new life without totally burning out?
Well, the most important thing to remember is that the goal isn't to forcefully drag your identity into the present. That just creates more nervous system stress. The goal is to invite it forward gradually. And the first tool we want to share is a practice called Name the Upgrade.
I love the simplicity of this. Walk us through how it works.
It is a 4-step process. Step one is to acknowledge what has actually changed in your life recently. Not what you wish would change or what you are planning to change, but what has already demonstrably shifted. Maybe you finally set a firm boundary with a difficult family member, or you stepped into a new leadership role. You have to clearly identify that real, tangible upgrade.
Because we often overlook the quiet progress we've made. We move the goalposts on ourselves so quickly. Okay, what's step two?
Step two is to notice what part of you still thinks you are the old version. Let's say you got that leadership role. Notice the part of your brain that still whispers, I'm just the junior employee who doesn't know what they're doing. You don't judge it, you just observe where the lag is happening.
You're just bringing the lag into the light so you can see it clearly.
Exactly. Then step three, speak the upgrade out loud. There is neurological power in hearing your own voice state the new reality. You might say, I am someone who handles responsibility with calm confidence. You aren't faking it. You are just verbally acknowledging the identity that is already emerging.
And then step four brings it out of our heads and into the physical world.
Yes. Step four is doing small, daily actions to teach your nervous system that this new identity is safe. If your new identity is someone who speaks confidently as a leader, your small action might be sharing just one idea in your next meeting, or sending an email without adding the word just to soften it.
It's like gently holding your nervous system's hand and walking it into the new reality step by step. But let's be real for a second. Even with a gentle practice like that, resistance is going to pop up. When imposter syndrome hits, it doesn't feel like a gentle software glitch. It feels like a blaring fire alarm.
It really does.
You hear that insidious voice that says, I'm not ready for this, or eventually everyone is going to figure out I'm a fraud. This brings us to the second tool, manifestation debug mode. How do you just introduce new code when the fire alarm is ringing?
I think this is where a lot of people get stuck. When they hear that loud voice of resistance, they panic. They think the fire alarm means there is actual fire, that it's a red flag indicating they are fundamentally broken. But in debug mode, we reframe the alarm completely. That resistance, that tight tension in your stomach, the racing thoughts, that is just old code trying to maintain stability.
So the alarm isn't warning me of danger, it's just the sound of the system updating.
Exactly. It's not a red flag. It is simply the somatic sensation of your nervous system recalibrating. Instead of aggressively trying to fight the thought, you just introduce a new line of code. When that voice says, I'm not ready for this, you reply with, my life is inviting me to grow into this.
My life is inviting you to grow into this. Just saying it out loud changes the energy in the room.
Think about how much pressure that single sentence removes. You don't have to be perfect on day one. You don't have to have the exact right identity fully formed right now. You just have to be willing to grow into the space that your life has already carved out for you.
It completely diffuses the panic. You realize, oh, I'm not failing. I'm just growing into this. It's so incredibly empowering. And to really cement this feeling, there's some wonderful reflection prompts for you to sit with later today. Maybe jot them down in a journal or just ponder them while you're driving home.
There are 4 powerful prompts designed to help you see the identity that is trying to emerge. The first is, where in your life has growth already occurred? Acknowledge the quiet progress that you've likely ignored.
That sets a great baseline. The second prompt asks you to look backward. What identity are you still clinging to that belongs to the past? Are you still referring to yourself as bad with money when that hasn't actually been true for years?
Prompt number 3 is very revealing. Where might you be underestimating the person you've become? Other people often see our growth long before we do. Where are you still displaying hesitation when everyone around you clearly sees you as a leader?
And the final prompt points you forward. What version of yourself is trying to emerge right now? You don't need a perfect, polished answer for this. Just try to sense the general direction you are being pulled toward.
Because identity integration begins the very moment you consciously recognize the person who is already emerging within you. These prompts are not merely intellectual thought experiments. They are strategic interventions designed to bridge the chasm between objective reality and self-concept. And to finalize that bridge, we want to offer a highly effective somatic grounding visualization. This is a sensory tool designed to help the nervous system viscerally experience and therefore become familiar with the fully integrated self.
I think it's the perfect way to anchor everything we've discussed today. I want to walk you through this visualization right now. Obviously, if you are driving or operating machinery, keep your eyes open and focused on the road, but just allow the imagery to wash over you. If you are somewhere safe, perhaps sitting on your couch or taking a quiet walk, Maybe softly close your eyes for a moment.
Let yourself settle in.
I want you to vividly picture yourself walking down a quiet, incredibly peaceful path. Maybe it's a dense, ancient forest with golden sunlight filtering through the canopy. Maybe it's a dirt path winding beside a slow-moving dark blue river. Or a wide open field of tall grass swaying rhythmically in the wind. Feel the solid rhythm of your feet making contact with the ground. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. It is perfectly quiet. It is deeply safe.
As you continue walking down this path, you look ahead, and you notice someone standing in the distance waiting for you. Even from far away, before you can see their face, you can sense their distinct energy. They're incredibly calm. They are deeply grounded in their body. They are steady. They are not rushing. They're perfectly at ease in their environment, taking up space without apology.
You keep walking toward them, the gravel crunching softly under your feet. And as you get closer, the specific details come into sharp focus. You recognize the posture, the familiar tilt of the head, the way they hold their hands. And suddenly, with a wave of profound recognition, you realize it is you. It is you, but it's the future version of you. The version who has fully, completely, and gracefully integrated all the recent massive changes and growth in your life. The lag has dissolved. They have stepped fully into the upgraded reality, and they wear it beautifully.
Now, I want you to imagine walking right up to this fully integrated future self. You stand side by side with them. Notice how they are breathing. Slow, deep, unhurried, diaphragmatic breaths. Let your own physical breathing synchronize with theirs. Match their steady rhythm. Inhale. Exhale.
And now, gently, take a step sideways and seamlessly step into that version of yourself. Merge with them completely. Feel what it feels like to inhabit that body from the inside out. Notice how your posture naturally shifts to become more upright, yet entirely relaxed. Feel your shoulders drop an inch away from your ears. Feel the micro-tension in your facial muscles soften. Feel the profound, heavy sense of safety wash over your nervous system. Your body recognizes this new identity. It is not foreign. It is home. You are entirely safe here. Sit in that exact physical sensation for just a moment.
You let your body actually feel the steadiness of an identity that is no longer lagging behind but is fully aligned with your life. You allow your nervous system to recognize what that safety feels like.
Because once your body experiences that feeling of calm integration, it becomes so much easier to return to it in your daily life.
It's a low-stakes rehearsal for your nervous system.
Exactly. As we begin to bring this incredibly dense deep dive to a close, let's briefly recap the terrain we have covered today.
We have traversed a significant amount of material. We began by defining the fundamental biological disorientation of identity lag, the unavoidable gap created when the velocity of your external reality outpaces the neuroplastic updating of your internal self-image.
Right.
We examined the extreme historical and sociological manifestations of this, from Neil Armstrong's protective retreat following the Apollo 11 lunar landing, to the neurological reasons why lottery winners actively self-sabotage sudden wealth to return to a familiar baseline of scarcity.
The scarcity baseline.
We deconstructed the neuroscience, learning how theories from McAdams, Marcus, and Feldman Barrett explain the brain as a predictive engine, and why the amygdala interprets even wildly positive novelty as a survival threat. Finally, we translated that science into actionable protocols, utilizing tools like Name the Upgrade, debugging the resistance through somatic awareness, and employing sensory visualization to actively help our internal architecture catch up to our external expansion.
Which brings us to the ultimate distilled takeaway of this entire exploration.
Major life changes can happen in an instant, but identity evolves in deliberate biological layers. The uncomfortable gap between those two speeds is not a mistake, nor is it evidence of your inadequacy. It is the mandatory integration phase of human transformation. Disorientation is the empirical proof of growth. Sometimes your life simply upgrades before your identity does.
The gap between your new upgraded reality and your old familiar identity is not a problem that you need to aggressively solve. It is simply growth and progress. The next time you feel completely out of place in your own upgraded life, just take a deep breath and remember. It's just identity lag. You are simply in the assimilation phase. So if we accept this premise that identity evolves slowly over time, and that you are perpetually outgrowing your current self-concept, what is the logical next step? What happens when you fundamentally stop trying to finalize who you are?
Right.
What happens when you abandon the pursuit of a permanent, fixed, static identity, and instead begin to intentionally iterate your sense of self like a piece of constantly evolving software?
That is the exact paradigm we are going to explore in our next deep dive, titled Living in Beta.
It promises to be a fascinating exploration of psychological agility. We will look at how to maintain fluidity and adaptability in a cultural landscape that constantly, aggressively demands we define ourselves rigidly.
I can't wait for that one.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We really encourage you to take that one small action this week. Try walking through the Name the Upgrade practice, or just whisper, "My life is inviting me to grow into this," the next time you feel that heavy resistance. Step gently into your emerging identity. We will catch you on the next one.